All right. What's up, guys? So I'm here with Justin and Kam Mehr, and we're all in different time zones, actually. But appreciate you guys hopping on the podcast.
Of course, man. Thanks so much for
You're,
having us.
you're the one on the West Coast. You had to wake up earlier than me and him. So thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Hey,
Seriously.
man. Anytime, anything for you guys. But that's funny because I want to start. Justin and I were just talking about this earlier. So the trader and quality that really stuck out to me when you guys were in high school and stuff, and I was watching Justin play, was how much you value each other and your family, as that love was super clear and very, very cool to see. Like, even when I was that young, it was noticeable for me. So could you just start off and tell me like who or what taught you the importance of valuing your family?
Yeah, Cam, if that's cool, I guess I'll start it off. So it really goes back to my parents, to be honest. So long story short, they immigrated over, right? From Iran. They came over with essentially nothing. Some of the stories that, Cam and I would hear were just amazing, like the things that they battled through to then fast forward to create a good life for us, right? And that, I think, from a young age is what gave like Cam and I this sense of like value what you have, especially family, right? Because for a long time it's really just been us four,
Right.
and then especially even if you narrow it down, because Cam and I are so close in age, it was really just us two.
Wow.
And I can't tell you how many hours we've spent together just through everything from growing up, so I think that really like brought our bond together early as just more than brothers, but also just as like best friends. It's really hard to explain to people sometimes
Uh-huh.
just how close we are. But I think that's where it starts from, is having that sense of family that was rooted from like a young age of kind of it's us, we're all we have.
Right, right. And what was like an example story that they'd tell you when you were growing up that kind of switched your perspective on, wow, they really battled through this, so gave you some light into, hey, I can do this, right? My parents have done it before.
Do you want to go?
I mean, off the top of my head, the example or story is just kind of the emphasis of both my mom, you know, growing up, she would always tell us about how like close she was to her own mom.
Uh-huh.
And when her mom, like passed, we saw kind of like the toll it took on her and how much it affected her. So at that point, just every single time we'd see other family and we'd see how much it means to them because they were so distant, like they're kind of forced to based on being in different countries and all that. It definitely made that impact on them. You saw how special it was and just wasn't them, being forced to see each other. So that's why it felt like whenever me and Jay were just at home, like staying in, it wasn't us like, oh, we're not going out, like we're staying in. It was just what we wanted to do. It was just kind of like hanging out with your best friend at home. So I feel like it's just through example of how we saw our mom and dad just act around how grateful they were to be around their siblings and their parents and all that.
Hmm. I gotcha. And they're now in Texas, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So on that timeline, it was around when, so I was going into my senior year at UCI. So this was summer 2017.
Okay.
I was going into my senior year. Cam was starting his freshman year at UCI.
Wow.
And that's when they decided to make the move. So my dad went first to go kind of get settled. And then a few months later, my mom went over there with him. So they're in Texas now. I'm still in Texas in a different city. I'm in Houston,
Right.
in the Austin area. And then we got East Coast Cam over there.
Yep. So how was that year at UCI when you guys were both living together? So first time, just you two, and parents are gone. Can you talk more about that experience?
I mean, for those listening as well, though, like that one year was like a transition year where our parents were in Texas and me and Jay were just commuting back and forth to UC Irvine, living in like a family friend's house. So that if that one year you're asking, right,
Yes.
of how that was just like a totally new experience. Me and Jay living on our own. And it was humbling in a lot of facets because at that point, we were super grateful for our mom. was cooking for us a lot growing up in high school. And then we were just trying to find any ways to kind of make our routine and what we wanted to make out of it work. So, plug in stove. We were just like meal prepping for the week. And
Uh-huh.
at that point, I was new to kind of just college in general. So he took me under his wing and we were both going to UCI, showed me where to walk on campus and all that. So we just had a lot of time to both of us kind of learn more about ourselves. And I was just in like a transition period in my life.
Mm.
Kind of felt like a fifth year of high school in that case, because still in South Orange County from going to high school at Capo and Mission Viejo. So just a lot of learning experiences, and looking back, like that's one of my favorite years of my life, honestly.
And to build on what Cam said, to give a little bit of context, I guess. So Cam and I went to the same high school as Connor, albeit, different classes, but we ran into each other a lot, especially through basketball. So UC Irvine, from where we grew up, went to high school, is not that far. I mean, with traffic, if you're leaving in rush hour, it can get up to an hour, but it's not,
Yeah.
it's a drivable distance. So that was why I went there in the first place, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it was the one that made financial sense. We didn't really, I didn't want to take out loans, and we didn't really have the money for me to go off somewhere. So I commuted for my first 3 years, and then going into senior year, commuting as well, because that's just where we live. But when they left, it was too late for me to transfer and go somewhere near them in Texas. So I stayed, and Cam had been accepted and decided to go there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So like he said, we rented a room, and man, in that year, we learned so much. I wish we had pictures that I could share on here. It was just a room in the bottom floor. It was the only room on the bottom floor of the house. It was the garage and then the room we lived in. So we threw two mattresses on the ground next to each other. We put a microwave like on the dresser, and we had one of those plug-in stoves. There's a picture of me on the first day. I'm like hunched over making scrambled eggs on a plug-in stove in my pajamas. But I swear, as bare bones as it was probably one of the most fun years of my life, because me and him, it was like we were straight up just a team that year. Wow. We would drive over to school, we'd go to class together, we'd park, he'd wait for me after class, we'd come home. It makes you realize, like, I don't need a fancy place. I don't need any of those things. Like, all we had was two mattresses on the ground, the microwave, the fridge, and a plug-in stove. And I was so happy. Like, that was all I needed. And it gave me a much needed perspective.
Bro, at one point, we were looking forward to, once the NBA finals started, like the NBA playoffs in like April and May, like we would Reddit stream and plug in his laptop to the TV and eat like chicken and rice on our beds, like watching the TV. And we were just in like pure bliss, like just laughing. And like, it sounds like so weird to like hear almost, but we were just looking forward to the small things, because we knew like the timeline of what we were going through at that point wasn't gonna like last forever. Like, I kind of knew, med school or where I was transferring next in the future. So, man, just like looking back on that, I feel like even at that time we were really taking it all in.
How did you manage to realize that, hey, this timeline is gonna end? I'm not gonna be living with Justin forever. Like, how did you manage those thoughts and kind of just stay, hey, like, this is a little moment, but I'm gonna enjoy it for as long as I can?
I think the main thing was just based on the fact that it was his senior year at UCI. We both knew that our parents being in Texas, I wanted to go to like transfer to a school in Texas to be closer to them. And just like they'd been there for a year at that point. So I knew the next school I could get in-state tuition as well. So like we kind of knew just like tangibly both of our paths were like transitioning in that time.
Okay.
And we knew it wasn't a long-term, move staying in that room as well.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like the mindset of like savoring it, not like taking it for granted.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, like at some points, it wasn't always like we still had like to study and like a lot of like work to do at that point. So I'm not trying to like glamorize it in that sense of like every single day we were just like posted up like laughing and stuff. But
yeah.
But man, I just like knew I was lucky to have that year where me and him were lined up going to the same school, and also, yeah.
For sure.
I got you. Now, how was it like? Because for a lot of people, college is like a vacation. And hey, I'm going here, I'm partying, I'm going out all these weekends. And that's cool because that's what they want, right? But how was that for you to just literally be commuting every day? Justin, this you commuted for 4 years, right? To UCI.
Yeah.
And Cam, your first year, you guys were just in that one room waiting for each other, picking up from class and absolutely just grinding. Electric stove on the floor. Like, how was that? Seeing other people like doing the normal college stuff, basically.
I'm not gonna lie, it was frustrating, and I think Cam knows this because I've told him this a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
In the When you go all the way back to, when you're like a senior in high school and you see everyone's wearing the sweater of where they're going, and then you slowly see your friends kind of go off to school, and then it starts. And granted, social media is not usually a reality. In
Right.
fact, it's probably not a reality at all. But you're like, oh man, everyone's having so much fun, and I'm sitting in traffic for an hour. I'm going back home. Like, I don't have my own independence. And I think I carried a little bit of like frustration and bitterness about that
Okay.
for while I was there. But so it was difficult. I think in hindsight, I can look back and be like, but man, the things I learned,
Mm.
like how I grew through doing that was incredible. Because not everyone even has the opportunity to go to school, and I was sitting there complaining about, going to school just because I had to live at home,
Yeah.
which I didn't dislike, but I think naturally a lot of us, we imagine when we go off to school, it's, you pack your suitcase in the back of the car and you head over to your dorm or something like
Yeah.
that. But for us, it made financial sense at the time. And I got to spend time. Cam was playing for Capo at the time with you,
Yeah.
in the program. So I got to go see games, and I wouldn't have been able to see them win the CIF championship in basketball if I had been living in another state. I wouldn't have been able to see all those games. So the things that I got, the time I got to spend, in hindsight, I can look back and go, wow, I'm really glad I did what I did for those 4 years, even though it was not easy. And at the time, I was a little frustrated by it.
Mm. Wow, that's some deep stuff right there, Justin. That's real though. But it's funny you mentioned how it all worked out so you could watch Cam play, and they ended up making it to the CIF championship, winning that, going on to state. So I know we're kind of jumping around, but we're gonna go back a little bit. We're gonna go to high school,
Yeah.
right? And both you guys have your respective journeys, and we'll get into that. But so for you, Justin, you started at SM and then transferred over to Capo, and in high school, that's a very hard time because a lot of people that you knew growing up, just this little bubble, and you kind of had to leave one bubble, go to the next in the middle of high school. So you're switching friend groups and, all juggling all this stuff. So could you kind of talk about that transition and how you handled that process of making new friends and adjusting to the new environment?
Yeah. So to go back, I had gone to the same school, kindergarten to 8th grade, and essentially everyone from that school goes to the same high school, which is where I started. So from kindergarten to 10th grade, you're surrounded by the same people, right? And I still talk to, a good amount of those people to this day. I consider them friends for life.
That's cool.
What happens, it is a very hard change. I remember when you finally make that switch, and especially in that age, that's just such a vulnerable age in terms of you're figuring out just about how you even deal with yourself, let alone adjusting to meeting all these new people and things like that. So it was hard. And I remember the thing that made me the most comfortable was that summer between when I transferred high school. I was scared, even though I probably didn't give it off. I was so scared. It's a totally new thing. And I remember starting off and you playing sports. It always ends up going back to basketball somehow. But I remember summer basketball camp, so that when you show up on day one, even if you don't have any best friends yet, you look around, you recognize a couple of guys you've been playing 2-3 months with now, and you're like, okay, I think I can do this. Especially it was neighborhood kids now that you've seen around, you just had never talked to, and it really helped. And I'm so thankful, man. Those 2 years I spent at Capo, I talked to so many of those guys. I've been to weddings, I've been back to visit them. Everyone's all across the country, the world. Just I'm so thankful for those 2 years that I got there as well. And it forced me to grow as a person, man. It was huge change, but change is what pushes you forward, right?
Wow, for sure. I mean, Capo's a program or school, I guess, that holds super special place in my heart. Absolutely love that place, the whole culture of it. But what would you say? And then Cam, you can piggyback off of Justin too. What's the biggest thing that you took from playing basketball that still holds true to you today?
I think it's the discipline, the falling in love with not just the end point, right? Like I think Cam will agree, we spent so many nights just shooting hoops late night on a Friday, on a Saturday, enjoying the process of getting better. Like it was never using the motivation of, okay, well, we're this many days away from when the stands will be packed.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that applies to, applied to college, applies to, school,
Right.
grad. If you're always chasing like the extrinsic motivation, I don't think a lot of times you're able to keep up with the day to day. But basketball really forces you to, if you truly love it, to fall in love with the, sounds cliche, but the grind or the day to day more so than just trying to check off the days until you get to the event or the game.
Yes.
Right? Like I genuinely just love to just go and just shoot around and work on myself, work on my game. And I'm not saying I was the best. I wasn't, setting the world on fire, but just
Sniper, though.
for myself, it felt so fulfilling.
Yeah.
And I think I take those lessons even today into school, into medicine, everything I do now.
That's really cool to see how that still is with you today. What about you, Cam?
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, just like these really small things, because based on being part of that like brotherhood of being on the team, you don't just get like any opportunity to go, I mean, for the most part, like with your friends in like Palm Springs, and just have that like one mission when you're there, when you're not part of a team. So these little small things, like looking back on that, you think about how much like you bond over that time, and just like, man, small things. I remember like me, Draper, and you on like Friday afternoons with like the shooting machine and like be shooting around, and like
Yeah.
once we got like the aux going, like we felt like we were in just like pure bliss in terms of like where we were and stuff. So these really like small moments you realize it's just like how special they are. Like even like looking back today, I know it sounds corny, but like sometimes I just can't like stop smiling when I think about these like small moments that like make me laugh. So I think it's like an understatement to think about how special it was, because at the end of the day as well, like, football, you got like 70 guys on the roster. There's a pretty small like cliques of sorts or like groups of sorts like on the team, but just based on the number of guys on the team, like it was like 11 or 12 of us, my senior year, like junior year, for the most part, it's a small group of guys. So you get to know each other really better. And there's something to be said about once you make a really deep connection with a few group of guys, like when you go to school, like you feel so at home and comfortable, and always having that like one older brother at home, just being kind of like a small circle. I feel like it really benefited me just being part of that team. So man, like I'm super grateful for just like all the things, like not even like the big games that people talk about.
Yeah.
Those small things.
That's so cool. And Cam is a CIF champion. So that's
Where's the ring, Cam?
Yeah.
I should have worn. I think it's back home, like in Texas.
Well, I've seen the games. I went to all the playoff runs, and could you walk me through basically that senior year? Because you guys were a loaded team. I know we talked over the phone. You talked about playing time and all that stuff. So if you could just dive into that whole year, that'd be great.
For sure. So yeah, overall that year, just like I was part of a team with a group of super talented guys. I could just like name them all, but Dawson, Grayson, Nick Libovich, Draper, I mean, so many guys like Arion, Mike. I almost want to like list off everyone because I don't want
Ramsey too. We got Ramsey.
Yeah, yeah,
Callahan.
like seriously. So I was just, it felt special like going to practice and being a guy that wasn't like, I would work really hard, but wasn't as gifted as like a lot of these guys. So I'd be like guarding a guy like Dawson and stuff. It forced myself to kind of bring the best out of me and just try to level up as much as possible. So that was a special run in terms of just seeing how everyone stayed the course, kind of blocking out the outside distractions and how much we grew from game one. And even like before that, going to like spring league and all those drives up to like Anaheim and the American Sports Center till that last game. So I would say that was a special year because we were super tight knit. And I know probably most teams are going to say they were tight knit, but there was something to be said about the connection everyone had.
Right.
Even me back then, like looking back on it, um, I kind of like knew my role and I was super like glad to be in my role. At some point, I would like because I remember I talked to you on the phone about this as well.
Yeah.
I'd walk away from the game and in my own head, as like a high schooler, you're thinking like, oh, if I don't get in, I'm kind of like a failure or something. So like my self-confidence would go down. But every time I like regain perspective, I would understand like how lucky I was to be a part of that team and that like every person's role kind of made the team go. So that's kind of my whole thing on that year.
Wow. And how did you realize, like you said, when you change your perspective, but how did you even get to that point of changing perspective? Because I know a lot of people that would, if they were in that moment, they'd quit or say, hey, this really isn't for me. I'm gonna go somewhere easier, right? I'm gonna just not have to worry about basketball. But what was that trigger to kind of say, hey, I'm here, I'm on a CIF championship team? Like, what did you tell yourself to get there?
I mean, to be honest, it was a process in terms of, like you kind of like fall in and out of that like mentality of like you need some like reminders in terms of like talking to Jay and just like going back to practice and understanding like I'm like tight friends with these guys. Like I want the best for this team so much that I'm not gonna let sometimes like my own mentality, because it wasn't like one of those things where like, oh, I think I'm better, I should be playing. Is someone that's always was just so kind of like motivated and hardworking at that time, I would associate certain end goals or results in terms of like my value at times. So it wasn't like one of those things where like, oh, I want to quit because I'm not playing. It was, am I adding any value if I'm on the bench? And looking back, I can definitely say that there's a lot of value that you can add,
For
even if
sure.
you're not like one of the guys on the team as well. So I think coming down to like, I mean, it was all love. Like, go back to practice, and we're just like such tight knit friends. Like, how could you pretty much like betray or like take away from how much good is going on the team by being selfish like that? So, yeah, that's kind of how I feel on that.
That's an incredible perspective, Cam. I remember one time we were at practice, and I'd go to practice with you guys. That was my freshman year, yeah. So there was one time I said, Cam, what do you think is the biggest thing? And I don't know why, but it stuck with me. I think someone was getting flustered. You were guarding him because your work rate was just insane, right? And you were like, don't care about the opinions of others or hurting their feelings just because they're teammates. Like, you just do you go out and you work hard, and if they want to get upset about that, that's their problem, because someone was getting mad that you were just like being a pest basically. So I know that's a little off topic, but I figured I had to
Oh,
throw
for
that in
sure.
there.
And I think that was probably an internal conflict I dealt with as well, because at the end of the day, I still catch myself feeling this way.
Mhm.
Like internally, I am a people pleaser because I always love to make other people happy, like other people like laugh and that kind of thing. So there's just certain things at that time, like playing your role and just being like annoying as heck on
Yeah.
defense, that I would just have to kind of like ingrain in my own head, like, no, this is kind of I guess making everyone better. So those kind of things, I want to make sure that if I'm talking to you, like I'm letting you know the
Mhm.
benefit that can come out of just being in your own zone.
Right.
Like you're not thinking about these external, like, am I like best friends with everyone in this certain moment of time? So
Mhm. That's deep, man. I mean, this has been a great podcast, man. I just love talking to you guys. Always brightens the day. But I've been jumping around a little bit. We're gonna fast forward, I guess, to when you guys went your own separate ways. So Justin, you're in Houston at this point, I believe, and Cam's living in College Station, right down in Texas.
I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina right now, but in college, I was in College
College.
Station.
Okay. My bad. I should have clarified that. But
No, you're all good.
you told me that you would literally be walking in the rain with water up to your ankles, just debating kind of living alone and question like, hey, why am I not fulfilled? This is where I always wanted to be, so why can't I be happy? So could you tell me what those back and forth conversations were like in your head? And then what advice did Justin give to you during that time? And Justin, feel free to speak whenever.
For sure. So after that 1 year where me and Jay were going to UC Irvine together, I transferred to Texas A&M. So about 2 hours where my parents were living in Texas, which is a little north of Austin. And that was the first year where I was living alone. And the first year of my life I had like ever lived apart from Justin. So pretty much at that point to my life, like at home, like if I needed help with like homework or just advice, I would have someone like present with me that I can just like talk to. So there was just a lot of changes going on in that moment. It wasn't necessarily like specific to where I was in Texas. It could have been in if I went to Northern California or just anywhere in the world. It was just so much changes, and I'd been living in my own like comfort zone back home. Even though I was like super grateful for how everything was,
Mhm.
there was a comfort of, your mom's like cooking dinner in high school and like you have your brother right by your side.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Jay can talk about this, but that East Texas rain, like I didn't have a car and I was walking to the bus. All of a sudden, like August, January, doesn't matter. Like the whole ground would be like flooded. I just walk into class all the time, like drenched. And I was living in a 2x2 apartment that was vacant, and I didn't know anyone in Texas at that time. Um, so I was just like kind of a lot of alone time, and there's a lot of humbling experiences
Mm.
just
That's
putting yourself out there and all that. So I learned so much in that year.
And he's not mentioning he didn't have a car at the time too, and that's a big campus, man. I've been on that campus before. It's a long walk, and sometimes if the buses aren't running, he would walk it and he would call me on the phone. And the one time he's talking about, especially when it rained really hard, and he was coming back at night. Those were we had a long phone call, and I remember it was one of those things where I in hindsight, I think he'll agree too. It almost ended up being a positive, right? Because it forces you to reevaluate what you're doing, because in the moment you're like, man, this sucks, right? Because you're just looking at, I'm wet from the rain. I just walked. Why am I here? Everything sucks. I hate it. I hate it. And this is something that Cam's told reminds me of as well when I'm on the other side of it is think about like a year ago, 2 years before that, 3 years before that, if you told that that
mm,
this is where you are now, you'd be like, heck yeah, I'll take that. That sounds incredible. Like that's what I'm working. That means I accomplished what I want. And it
right.
gives you the perspective to hopefully say, all right, today wasn't my day. What's it going to take to make it my week? Right. Or like, how can I be more actively thankful for what we have? And because just those little moments, I think that one rainy day led to Cam, a few steps down the line, meeting some of his best friends and having some of the best memories ever.
Mm,
Yeah, because at that point, I've been working at the Barnes and Noble's bookstore out on A&M's campus, and it was like it was probably more. probably like a 35-minute walk to my apartment.
Wow.
But like my shift got off at 10, and the bus routes like on like a campus stopped running at like 6 p.m. after the last lecture. And all of a sudden, it was like January, it started raining so much, and the umbrella with all the wind got blown away and ripped apart. So like at that point, I think my laptop and my backpack was getting drenched. So I put like my shirt over it.
Uh-huh.
And I was like talking to Jay on the phone, and I was getting frustrated because the connection was going out. So at that point, I disconnected, and it was one of those like breakthrough moments for me in terms of like, yeah, it's tough right now, but this is such a small like thing relative to it.
Wow.
I mean, like you're walking back from just like like a student shift at the bookstore. Like, are you just gonna kind of like fold? Are you
Uh-huh.
gonna like play the cards you were dealt and just fold, or are you gonna find a way to navigate from that? At that point, I wasn't involved with anything on campus, and I realized that I like needed to be. So I
Mhm.
made a bunch of like small changes to my lifestyle back then.
Yeah.
To kind of get out there and put myself out there. So that one night, in terms of like that one rainy phone call, though, Jay made a huge impact, and the advice can't understate how much it meant.
That's incredible. You guys are special, man. So Justin, you I want to, because just for those of you who don't know, Justin worked with the basketball team at UCI for 2 years, right? Freshman and sophomore year.
2 years, yeah.
And that was when they were made the tournament, right? A couple years.
Yeah, my freshman year, we made the school's first NCAA tournament in history. I probably have the ring somewhere back home too, but and then we played Louisville, and this was the Louisville team. It was like Terry Rozier and
Steva.
Montrez Harrell.
Yeah.
I think we lost. I think it was like 57-55, lost by 2. It was that was my freshman year.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And you guys had Mamadou too. That was Mamadou at the time. But you left the team after your sophomore year, right, to focus on school.
Right.
So how was that? Once again, another transition, not from SM to Capo, but this time it's from basketball to no basketball. How was that after being on a team essentially your whole life?
Right. Yeah. So I remember when I decided, like, hey, okay, I'm gonna go to UC Irvine. I'm gonna stay close. How do I get involved? And kind of throw myself into school, because it's very easy to just drive there, go to class, come back. I wanted to get involved. So I remember I reached out back when I was it was like June, I think, ending high school that month, and then college would start 3 months later. Reached out about being a manager.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward, I ended up working for the team, and I did a ton. I looking back now, we helped run practice, do the things like organize equipment, take equipment on the road trips, the laundry. Heck, I'd even get thrown into practice occasionally, run open gym with the guys, help break down film, all these things which was incredible. You help run summer camps. So super cool experience. It was a big time commitment, right? And I was balancing school at the time too. And but it had gotten to the point where I remember, because I came in as a bio major. I was like, yeah, I think I want to go to med school. I don't know if I knew how much work it would entail. I don't know if I was, instead of doing a couple things well, I had just spread myself too thin.
Okay.
Made the call to step away after my sophomore year. And it's a big change, right? Because, when you're involved in anything for a long period of time, and for us three, it was basketball. I mean, Connor, you're still involved in it.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're like, well, what do I do now? That's almost like part of who you are.
Yes.
You're known as, you fill your time with basketball. You're known as the guy who plays basketball. And then I was like, all right, well, what do I do now? So I took a job at the first month after in the maintenance and facilities department at the local gym, the Lifetime in Laguna Niguel.
Okay.
So now I would go to class. I'd go to class till like 4th, and I'd drive over and I'd work, like 2 to 10 or 4 to 10.
Wow.
At Lifetime, which was good. It helped me save up some money. It still was around, fitness, granted, not really in the hands-on sense, but it kind of helped me segue into life after, being all about sports, which I think was really, really helpful
Mm-hmm.
and helped me towards this transition to finish school and move on to whatever the next chapter was going to be, which was unknown at the time,
Right.
but it was something I had to do, I
Mm.
think.
No, I got you. That's super cool. But that's a grind though, man. Classes in the morning and then work from like 2 to 10.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
I remember, it felt like I had more free time because with basketball, the hours, are crazy. I remember there was one day in particular, it was finals week, my sophomore year. We had a game at University of, I want to say, North Dakota. I could be
Mhm.
mixing up the schools. We went to North Dakota, or it was finals week. So I took a final on Monday, walked over to the arena. We flew to Fargo, North Dakota, drove to Grand Forks,
Mhm.
played them, came back, showed up. I want to say it was like Thursday night, Friday morning, literally head back, take another final, right? Like I was trying to tell you, there was nights I would sleep in our equipment room, which was on the trainer's
Oh,
table.
yeah.
And I don't know if y'all have seen the hallways underneath the arena. They have these flat trainers tables where the guys get taped up for the games. I'd roll up the towels we'd use for practice, and I'd use it as a pillow, and I'd use the other towels as a blanket.
Jeez.
And I would leave my lunch for the next day in our fridge, wake up, go to class, come back to practice. It was a lot. And my grades suffered as a result. I had considered myself an okay student, and I was getting C's, C minuses. Heck, I even got a D in a class, and that was like, whoa.
Yeah.
You're either spreading yourself too thin, you're either not giving an appropriate effort, or you really need to reevaluate where you're putting your energy, because you only have so much energy to fill up these different cups
Right.
of life. But sometimes when you go through that struggle, it makes you reevaluate and figure out, all right, well, where do I want to put my energy? What are my priorities right
Mm. Wow. That's incredible. That's such a cool story to have. I'm sure it was very difficult during the time, but looking back on it, it's like, man, I really did that.
now? Amazing experiences, man. I mean, to be around to firsthand and see those two teams. I still talk to some of those guys to this day.
Mm-hmm.
I watched their games. I got to play, I got to play open gym with NBA guys. You get to meet so many cool people. I remember I went in and play open gym once, and Tony Gonzalez is sitting there.
Okay.
And I didn't say it. I'm sitting there too, and I'm sweaty, playing. Granted, I was just trying to, not get exposed on the court. And he reaches out, nicest guy. He reaches out like, "Hey, I'm Tony." I was like, inside, like, I know who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Clippers had training camp there, so we got to meet I remember, dapping up Chris Paul, Blake Griffin too. Those are
That's
things
so
a lot
dope.
of people can say. Incredible experiences. Same thing. Blake Griffin's like, "Yo, what's up? I'm Blake." Dog, I know who you are. I'm the one that should be introducing myself.
No, that's awesome. Wow. That's crazy. But Cam, this is the last one before we get into Through It All 3. This is kind of for you two, so just pop in whenever. Somewhere along the way, just struck a bell with me when you texted me that. You're always somewhere along the way. Can you describe what that little motto or phrase means to you? And then Justin, feel free anytime.
For sure. So right after one of the episodes, you asked the question of, um, if you saw your 18-year-old self, like your high school senior self,
Mhm.
playing basketball in the rain, like what would you go up and say to him?
Mm.
And at that point, like I don't know why that like hit home with me so much. I'm like, I gotta text Connor. So I hit you up after it, and like we were kind of like talking back and forth, and then you asked me like, what would you say to yourself? And it made me think about just growing up. I was very goal oriented, but kind of like you said in some episodes of like the double both sides of the sword. It's good to be goal oriented because you're constantly working hard. You have your sights set on bigger things.
Right.
The downside or the other edge of the sword is that you become so results oriented that you think that your life is pretty much a result of like checking these big boxes, like these big events in your life. Like the day I get into like my dream school,
Okay.
the day like like I go out with this certain girl,
Right.
I hit this big shot in front of like a packed gym. And I realized that even though it's good to look forward to like certain big events, and that was kind of like a downfall in some sense, like a big picture, kind of like a downside for me going through high school and kind of even like college as well growing up, because it would be hard for me to kind of keep perspective of where I was. And I would think if it wasn't like graduation day or the day I'm finally done with the semester, uh, then I was kind of in this like gray, just going through the motions kind of day. And I realized that so much of what I enjoy in terms of me like taking my time with the workout, waking up early, putting on like a podcast and like cooking breakfast in my own time is really like the things that keep me going throughout life and like put a smile on my face.
Wow.
And I'm constantly listening to like just different interviews and podcasts. And what really hit me is when someone said most of your life is just being somewhere along the way or throughout that path. And I think that really resonated with me because throughout high school, I always like wanted to get into like a certain school, Vanderbilt. And
Right.
was thinking to myself, like sitting at my desk in like sophomore, junior year, like honestly, none of everything going on matters. When I get into Vanderbilt, like nothing at this point, these kind of like internal struggles I'm going through will matter because like when I get into there, I'll have made it. But in reality, once you get into that next chapter, these whole set of next step things all of a sudden start popping into your brain. Like I'm sure Jay can talk about it as well. He always wanted to get into med school. All of a sudden he gets into med school. Everyone in like his class is talking about that next like big step exam.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden your brain, you're at that stage that you always wanted to be in life, but then like you're kind of like stressed about something else.
Yeah.
So what I meant about somewhere along the way is you have to just find the beauty in a morning where you're having peanut butter on a bagel, because that's something that just like is so therapeutic for you. Because the only thing, you know, better than like, a peanut butter on a bagel breakfast in that case is like a peanut butter on a bagel breakfast with like not worrying about something. If you get what I'm saying. I don't know where I was going with that one,
No, I got you.
but that's my whole thing about that.
And Cam, I remember we both listened to the podcast, and Cam called me right after, and we talked about it because it stood out to me too. And Cam reminds me of this, and hearing that reminded me of this. So it goes back to, it's the same concept of a lot of times we look at things in terms of, all right, once I get to this and we set something, like everything's gonna be okay. It's very easy, for the people that don't know. So like right now I'm in my third year of medical school. It's very easy to turn it into, I just need to get to this, right?
Right.
After your second year, you take this big standardized test, they hype it up, and it's a tough test, and everyone basically pushes life aside and just focuses on this. And then you got rotations, and it goes on and on and on. But then you ask yourself, and sometimes you have to do this through trial and error. Like you look back after you have literally sacrificed everything to just finish one of these steps, and you say, but once I finished it, I started thinking of things that were next on the checklist, right? So you take a step back and you say, all right, if there's always going to be something next that our minds are going to figure out, okay, well, now you're chasing these things, now you're chasing these things, that you need to stop and enjoy the moment, right? I'd say it to my friends in kind of a joking way, but I'd say this to Cam seriously in terms of, I've find so much more enjoyment in what I do now when I remind myself that where I am now is what I always dreamed of. I don't just mean that in terms of getting into school. I just mean that in terms of when I like walk over to the gym from my apartment, or I just drive and I see like the city skyline on the way to the hospital. You're like,
Right.
man, if you told 19-year-old Justin, who was a college kid, right? I remember as a college sophomore, I went into a Starbucks by campus and I saw a kid from UCI's med school sitting there with the med school standardized test review book. And I distinctly remember, I could see it now. I was like, man, that kid is so lucky, right? Like he gets to be there. And then, and I can look back, and when I was studying for that exact same test, fast forward 4 years, I was so stressed. Can't remember. I was a mess. And then I remember he would remind me, he said, don't forget that right now the opportunity to do this is incredible. And I take that with me now. I take that with me, and yeah, sometimes we got to wake up early and do all these different things, but I still get like giddy when I get to drive into the med center and think I get to do this, right?
Wow. Yes.
You know, where Cam was probably, I think, the first person to like tell me the quote itself. It's like, where you are now is what you always dreamed of. And it brought back all these things, come back of times you can remember when you achieved a thing that previous you only would have been bouncing off the walls with happiness about. You know, and that perspective really, really helps me find more joy in what I do and just kind of how I live life.
Wow. That's incredible perspective from both you guys. I definitely can relate to that, because for me it was like growing up, all I did was play basketball, especially from, I think it was 7th grade. I was at the rec center. I think I saw you at the rec center a couple times too, Justin, Montenoso.
Yeah.
I'd literally be out there 2 or 3 hours a day, just going, visualizing myself playing at Capo or getting that offer or playing college basketball. So that's what I woke up and I'm like, okay, where's my next workout coming from? But what you guys were talking about, I felt the same thing. So I feel like I'm climbing this mountain, right? Trying to go to the top, and the top is college basketball. And you get to that top, I get to that goal, I'm playing college basketball, but then you look out, and I don't know if you know what my podcast cover looks like on the top of your head, but it's like this guy looking out and it sees all these different mountains, right? So that's kind of how I felt once getting to college basketball. I thought everything was going to be sweet once I got there. But now I get there and I look out and it's the same obstacles, just amplified. So it truly fits into what you just said in terms of just enjoying the process, and you're always going to be somewhere along the way. So I just figured I had to throw that out there because it connected.
No, I mean, I'm sure, I guess I could like pose it back to you. I'm sure there were moments, maybe you finally like run out on game one when you used to think I just want to make, get that offer. Now you're like, now I want to play, or now I want to drop 20. Now I want to be the starter. Now I want to be Ollie. We do that, we set these things, and it can, if we don't keep it organized, sometimes it's easy to forget. I mean, man, Connor, I think if I told, when we were shooting back at like Montenoso or anything, I was like, Connor, you're going to get Concordia's going to be like, bro, we want you to come. You would have been like, dude, let's go. I think.
Right. No, I remember that. I think you were shooting. It was my dad and I. It's funny. It's crazy how I remember this, but my dad and I were shooting on the far basket. He'll remember this because he's got a great memory. And then I think it was you and John Marinuzzi, honestly. Does that sound somewhat correct?
Was it both of us, or you're saying it was one or the other?
Yeah, it was both of you guys. You were shooting.
Okay, no, that sounds about right. That's about the timeline when me and him were shooting a bunch over there.
Yeah, and then I just remember I had my cone. I was just doing my drills, and then you guys were saying, you just always, just Justin being Justin, saying, hey, man, keep up the great work. Like, I see you putting in the time. Just keep going. So.
And you did, bro. Man, I'm telling you, we were talking before this about, it's been a while since we've seen each other, but I feel like we've seen you a ton because we followed that senior season, Cam and I, so closely. Every morning. We were 2 hours ahead, so we'd send them updates the next morning. I was like, bro, Connor hit a half court shot for the win, or the 3/4 court. I was like, 3/4 court, bro, the league outright champs, like all these things, bro. Every game we were on top of it.
We would talk on the phone like you were our third brother. No, you honestly like are.
I still have the. I told Cam, I was telling Connor, I don't save that many things on Instagram, but I still have the left-handed floater versus Tribuco for the dub court.
And I will say that one thing that like kind of like sparked the connection of that friendship between me and you is you were just like so golden hearted from the get-go in terms of when I first knew you. Like for anyone listening, I need you to like keep it in perspective. Like you would get dropped off because you weren't driving back your freshman year of high school, like Friday afternoon after school. And then like you'd be shooting with me and Draper on that shooting machine.
Yeah.
And like the whole time you had the most like positive attitude. You were just like, even though there was like an age difference in terms of, I think I was going into my senior year, you were freshman at that time.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like that at all, but just because like your attitude just made me want to like everyone want to be around you as well. So I'm always forever grateful. Just like those like small moments of us shooting together, because you like sacrificed a lot in that sense because you're like fresh out of like into high school and stuff.
Right.
But you were just putting in the work. You were like humble about it as well. Just like super mature, like ahead of your time. So every single time I talk to like Jay, like I always like think you like come up just like a lot, but I'm just so impressed.
And Connor, I don't want to completely ruin whatever you had planned to talk about, but one last thing, and I think this applies. It taught me a lot too. Whether I don't think I'd ever told you this, but you would come up to both me and Cam, and you would ask us. You had a genuine curiosity, and I think that's something that is a super helpful lesson. Just to know that you can learn something from anyone. I tell Cam I learn a lot from him, even though he's younger than me. I try to learn everything I can from everyone. Has something you can. Right. You would come up and, you would ask about different tips about adjusting to the game or workout questions or just about life, right? And that was a good reminder to me. And like, man, that genuine curiousness to see what can I take from other people who have either been there about what to do or what not to do was really inspiring. So I try to keep that with me just through school, sports, work, life, everything to now, because you can really pull something useful that helps you grow from everybody. I mean, you always did a great job of doing that. And I think that's one of the reasons why you've accomplished the amazing things you have to date.
Well, I mean, first off, guys, that just hearing that from you means the most. I can't express how I feel right now. I was trying to hold back some tears here and there. I know my parents might I hear that and shed a couple tears, but appreciate you guys as always. Seriously, you guys have been incredible mentors to me throughout my time at Capo, and just like Cam was saying earlier, I just remember shooting on those Friday nights, just be there from whatever school started from 7:55, and then shoot with Cam and Draper, music going. That was great. And then Justin, same with you, man. Like my first Capo game was like 3rd or 4th grade, and I just remember watching you. Matter of fact, I saw you. I told you this the other day. Like I saw you at UCI because we took a field trip for Avid, and I'm right by the food court we just eat. I'm walking right in my Avid t-shirt, and I see this guy. I'm like, yo, Justin, right? I saw you playing, and he's at UCI right now. And I'm like, yo, you lit it up that one game and had like 7 threes or something like that. And he was like, I don't know if I had 7, but it was funny, man. Those were.
I felt big time after that, bro. I think that's the only time I've been signed recognized for athletic. I think I was on cloud 9. I think I probably just walked campus like 5 times to burn off that. How excited I was.
That's hilarious, guys. Well, I think now it's time for the Thru It All 3. So finish it with 3 questions. Whoever wants to go first can go first, but we'll go favorite superhero.
Joe, you can go first on this.
Oh my goodness. Favorite superhero, bro.
DC or Marvel, doesn't matter.
Whew. All right, I'm gonna go, bro. I think I got kind of mainstream answer, bro. I gotta go with Batman, man. I could still put on like I have even when I have a ton to do,
Uh-huh.
bro. Put on the Dark Knight for me, and I'm sitting down watching it front to back.
Okay.
I don't even know if I have a good reason for it. I think it's just that movie, man. It hits.
Yeah, it's a good movie, especially the one with the Joker. I don't know. Is that the Dark Knight Rising? Is that the same one?
I think that was just no, that was the O. Well, I don't know if it counts as the OG. The one with Heath Ledger as the Joker.
Yes.
Dude, that one. Heck, I might sit and watch that one now.
That was a movie.
Shoot. I'm gonna go with Spider-Man because
Okay.
the thing about his demeanor. Okay, so I'm not like too like I haven't like seen like all of them to know this for sure, but isn't he's pretty quiet, right? Like
Yes.
he's pretty like stealth and like how he moves.
Uh-huh.
There's something like I appreciate in terms of just like that man is in his bag. Like, he has that, like, silent confidence about him. And I'm not like too much of a quiet person, but there's like some like things I admire about these people that are just I don't know, like they're like a walk-in bucket, but they just
Yeah.
have that demeanor about them. So I'm gonna go with him.
I'm gonna get roasted. I'm gonna get roasted by my friends who are big DC and Marvel guys.
Yeah, I'm not.
For giving a subpar answer. I already know it. I can already do it now.
That's funny. Both great answers, by the way. Now this next one is the first ever true or false question. I kind of on the spot last night. So true or false? Johnny Manziel is the GOAT.
That's big facts. It's got to be true.
Okay, we got one truth to that. Justin.
Johnny Football. You're talking to two massive Texas A&M fans. The absolute GOAT.
Okay.
Manziel, bro.
One thing I want to add in is for anyone that like just like knows about Johnny but like hasn't been to College Station, like Connor, like he can do no wrong in College Station. Like to this day, like in the year like 2021, people are still repping Johnny gear on campus like it's 2012. And people are like, okay, it's just another good football player. Yeah, it was kind of a head case off the field. Dude, this man was the first of like its kind for A&M. You know, like Auburn before Cam had Bo, Florida before Tebow had Emmett, but that's why he's so special, and that's why like I rep him so much because he is like A&M. He's like the definition of A&M. Like he's all we have pretty much as that guy. So that's kind of an explanation behind the Johnny love.
Okay, that's fair. No, that's fair. Give all the guys who are not from College Station a perspective.
Yeah.
All right, now the last and final one, one I always like to finish with. What advice would you give yourself, your younger self, at your lowest?
All right, I guess I'll start. I think the biggest thing I would say is that what you learn about yourself at your lowest, you're gonna look back one day and just be so proud of yourself, right? And I mean, because there's quite a few low points, right?
Right.
But what you almost can pull away from those versus the feeling of the highs of things you accomplish are going to truly make you the person you are. I mean, the night I remember, to give a specific example of probably who I'd be talking to, the most recent, I remember just the first month of school here in Houston. It was a hard adjustment. I remember I sat one day in my car and I was just like on the verge of tears. Heck, I think I did cry, and I just somehow kept going. And you look back now and you wish you could tell that person, or tell, high school Justin or college Justin, who went through some absolute, ups and downs. Listen, just as cliche as it can sound, keep in mind that there's a quote somewhere. It's, your struggles will play the biggest part in determining your purpose.
Wow.
I can't remember who said that, but I would tell him, I said, those struggles are going to define what drives you. in the future, whatever that may be, right? Because the struggles that you had in basketball you may not end up playing basketball later, or you may not end up, whatever you were struggling about may not be applicable later in life, but the feeling of how you bounce back from it is going to morph and form the man you become, the person you become, the husband, brother, friend, coworker, classmate, everything that you become gets shaped by these moments of how you respond to that adversity. And I have that written on a whiteboard on my wall. It's like, remember that your struggle will define your purpose.
Love that, Justin. That's incredible. Kam?
Yeah, so I would say one thing that sticks out to me, and to this day, like once in a while, I still like mutter it in my own head, is the phrase, it just like impacts me a lot, is like keep going. Because you know how there's that quote where they say like, if something won't impact you like 5 years down the line, don't give it more than 5 minutes of your thought of like your like stress. I think that was big for me, because at certain points when you're in the trenches, which is a relative term because there's a lot of places where you're just like down in the trenches and you didn't really make that decision, like, am I gonna gather myself to keep going or not? That's when you look back and you learn on the most. It's easier said than done for sure, but it's not every day where you have the fresh cut, like you're wearing like just fresh out of the shower, you're feeling fresh and you're going out meeting up with some friends. It's kind of like that appearance of like it's grimy like out there relative to like whatever you want. So you just like failed this test, you're mentally conflicted in so many ways, you think you're not good enough. I would just tell myself back then that you need to have the mindset of keep going and play the cards that you were dealt or fold. Because so many times during that, I was just like, I'm doing the equivalent of like waving the white towel by just like sitting back and assuming that someone's going to come and help me. Like, no one is coming to save you. Like, as hard as that is to hear, even though I had Justin in my life and super grateful to have that advice, even when you have that mentor, I wish I had told myself, like, at the end of the day, it sounds kind of cutthroat, but no one is coming to save you, because someone can give you the greatest advice. There were sometimes Jay would give me the greatest advice. I would go right back into my room, lay my head down on the pillow, and be back in the trenches mentally. So I would just say, you gotta keep perspective that if you keep going, you're gonna find a way out. And not every day is like gonna be like easy about that, but enjoy those little things. And yeah, that's what I would say, honestly.
Incredible. You guys just killed this podcast. Seriously.
Appreciate you, my guy.
Hey, I don't know about Kam, this is my first one, so hopefully I appreciate you having me on. I can finally say I've been on the pod. It's an honor, man. When you asked us, I was like genuinely deep down like honored, bro, because we've been listening and you've been doing amazing work with it.
I can't overstate that.
Be able to just give a little piece of our stories on the platform that you have is incredible, bro.
Thank you, guys. I mean, like I said earlier, just incredible mentors for me. I know what your guys' moral compass looks like, and if I can just get a piece of that and learn from you guys and how you establish that, I mean, it's just incredible. So thank you for everything, and this has been one hell of an episode.
Of course, bro. Thank you. Can't wait to see you in Texas or North Carolina or heck.
Sure. Appreciate you more than you know. And you don't even need to be like, yo, I'm coming out here. Just show up. You show up, you got a place. We'll show you all over Texas, Carolina, doesn't matter. Like, you're seriously a brother to us. Like, genuinely, you always come up in our conversations. Like you being golden hearted, like, means more than you know, I swear.